Before sunrise, Rosa Bell was hanging Morgan Vale's shirts where no decent breeze could reach them without first passing through shadow. The back line ran behind the general store, low between a cottonwood post and the feed shed, hidden from Main Street by flour barrels and a leaning wagon bed. Morgan always brought 3 shirts, 2 white, 1 gray. He left them folded before dawn every other Friday and came back after dark, when the town lamps began to smoke. Rosa never asked why a man who could face a winter cattle drive could not stand beside a wash tub in daylight. She already knew. At 33, she had learned how shame moved through a town. It slipped under doors, rode in supply wagons, and sat down at supper before the truth arrived. Morgan had been a widower 11 years. People lowered their voices around him, praised his endurance, and watched for any sign that he needed more than coffee, fence wire, and silence. Rosa shook out the gray shirt. The collar had frayed again, and 1 cuff button was gone. She threaded a needle with blue cotton, reinforced the inside seam, and tied the knot where only Morgan would know to look. The hemp line gave a warning creak. "You hold 1 more week," she told it. She tested the starch between finger and thumb, thinned it with warm water, and pinned the first white shirt where the rising sun would touch it without lifting it above the fence. Cedar leaves waited in the folding basket beneath the table. Morgan liked the scent, though he had never admitted it. The store's back door opened. Edwin Cole stepped into the yard carrying 2 leather sample cases and wearing a coat too smooth for Kansas dust. "You always speak to your laundry," he asked. "Only when it listens better than men." Edwin smiled as though she had offered him something. He traveled with patent buttons, sewing notions, perfume, and promises about cities where a woman did not have to ruin her hands in lye water. For 3 visits, he had asked Rosa to take supper with him. For 3 visits, she had found work that could not wait. He set 1 case on her table and glanced at the shirts. Hotel work. "No!" Rosa lifted the gray shirt toward the line. A hard south wind struck the yard. The center rope snapped downward. 1 wooden pin split, and the gray shirt tore from her hands. It sailed above the fence like a surrender flag, cleared the wagon bed, and landed in the public alley under the boots of Mrs. Tally, who had brought 2 tablecloths for bleaching. Rosa reached the alley first. "Mrs. Tally looked down at the stitched letters inside the collar. V. Edwin stopped behind Rosa. 2 store clerks came to the doorway. Across the alley, the barber paused with his broom. "Those are Morgan Vale's." "Mrs." Tally said. Rosa picked up the shirt before another boot could touch it. Red dust marked 1 sleeve. She carried it to the pump, wet the spot before it could set, and worked soap into the weave with her thumb. "He pays for washing," she said. "Mrs." Tally's mouth tightened. "Before daylight. He chooses the hour. I do the work. And after dark." Rosa rinsed the sleeve. "Dark does not change the price." No one answered. By 8 o'clock, Mrs. Tally had taken back her tablecloths. Mrs. Pierce collected a bundle of children's clothes without meeting Rosa's eyes. Then the bank clerk's wife sent her boy for 6 collars not yet starched. 12 weekly bundles became 9 before the sun cleared the rooftops. Rosa wrote each withdrawal in her account book, then retied the damaged line with flour sacking. Her fingers did not shake until the 3rd name was crossed out. A boot scraped against the alley stones. Morgan Vale stood at the entrance, hat in 1 hand, while Mrs. Pierce carried her laundry past him. Morgan did not look at Mrs. Pierce. He watched the bundle in her arms until she disappeared around the corner. Then he stepped into the yard. Rosa kept her back to him and rubbed red dust from his sleeve. The soap had lifted most of it, but she worked the cloth longer than necessary because the alternative was looking at his face. "I came for the shirts," he said. "They are wet. I can dry them at home. You have no proper line. I have fence wire. That will leave rust." Morgan set 3 coins on the table. 2 were what he owed. The 3rd was too much. Rosa pushed 1 coin back. "I do not take hush money. That is not what it is. It is more than the charge. It is for the trouble. The trouble did not come from washing your shirts." Morgan glanced toward the store door, where a clerk pretended to sort crates. "I will not bring them again," he said. Rosa faced him. At 57, Morgan carried age in the careful way he moved rather than in weakness. Sun had browned his face, and grief had hollowed it where laughter once might have rested. You think that fixes this? It stops the talk. No, it leaves me standing here after you have gone. His eyes dropped to the damp gray shirt. I never meant harm to your name. Then stop treating my name like something that can only survive if no one sees you near it. Morgan took the two white shirts from the line. Water darkened his sleeves as he folded them badly against his chest. The gray one is not dry, she said. Neither am I. It was the nearest he came to admitting hurt. Then he took the gray shirt too, blue stitching visible beneath the collar, and walked out through the alley. By noon, Rosa had spread the remaining 9 bundles across every usable stretch of rope. The patched center dipped under the weight. She shifted heavy sheets toward the posts and marked each promised delivery in her ledger. Edwin returned after dinner with a measuring tape. What are you measuring? The yard. It already has dimensions. The store owner asked what rent it might bring as freight space. The words landed harder than the morning gossip. Mr. Harlan appeared in the doorway, flour on his apron. I have made no decision. But you are considering one, Rosa said. He rubbed his neck. I cannot keep a yard tied up if the work keeps shrinking. Edwin closed the tape. It does not have to shrink. Come to Wichita with me. Steam equipment, a storefront, no hauling tubs through mud, no women collecting bundles because they disapprove of who owns a shirt. And who owns this storefront? I would lease it. In your name. At first. And the machines. My investment. And if I wish to leave. Edwin's smile weakened. Why speak of leaving before arriving? Because terms are clearest before anyone boards a train. Rosa opened her ledger and calculated aloud. Lease, coal, equipment payments, lodging, Edwin's travel months, and the wages required if orders grew. By the end, his generous offer had become a business she would operate and he would control. I asked you to marry me, he said. You asked me to exchange one kind of dependence for another. Edwin lifted his cases. The Friday freight leaves next week at noon. I will be on it. Give me your answer before then. After he left, Rosa looked at the patched line and the 9 bundles shifting above the dirt. Mr. Harlan spoke from the doorway without meeting her eyes. I like having you here, Rosa, but this yard cannot remain uncertain forever. By the next morning, the Cattle Hotel sent over 18 white shirts stained the color of old pennies. The porter dropped them on Rosa's bench like bad news he hoped belonged to someone else. Mr. Danner says the well turned them this way. He said he tried more soap. Rosa unfolded one shirt beneath the light. Orange streaks followed the weave. Red trail dust lay across the shoulders, but the deeper stain had come from iron in the water. More soap only locked it in. The porter glanced at the sagging line. Can you save them? If I cannot, you owe nothing. By 7, every tub held a different stage of work. Rosa drew fresh water from the public pump instead of the hotel well. She mixed a weak sour rinse, tested it inside one hem, and waited. The orange mark softened without weakening the thread. She separated dust-darkened shirts from those carrying only iron stains. She loosened red soil with cool water first, then treated the rust after the grit washed free. When a store clerk tried to place a wet shirt beside a blue work coat, Rosa stopped him. White with white. Leave space between the sleeves. He obeyed. The hemp line bowed lower as shirt after shirt went up. Rosa shifted heavier pieces toward the cottonwood post and drove another nail into the featured brace. 2 pins cracked in her fingers. She replaced them with cedar pegs cut from packing scraps. By noon, the first row had begun to whiten, and the sour metallic smell had lifted from the cuffs. Morgan rode past the alley at walking speed. He did not stop, but his eyes moved from the tubs to Rosa's wrapped fingertips, then to the hotel porter carrying restored shirts across Main Street. 2 cattlemen beneath the hotel awning watched him unfold one. The cloth was white again. Mr. Danner came into the yard himself an hour later. He examined the cuffs, collars, and buttonholes, then tugged at a repaired seam. You men too. When cloth is worth saving, I have 4 bundles like this each week. Sheets besides, when the trail crews fill the rooms. Rosa named a price covering soap, fuel, water hauling, thread, and the strain on the line. Danner did not bargain. Have them ready Tuesdays. He placed the first payment in her hand where Mr. Harlan could see it. The account replaced most of what Rosa had lost. It also filled every stretch of rope she owned. 9 household bundles plus 4 hotel bundles made 13. Rosa wrote the number in her ledger and underlined it once. The line behind her sagged nearly to shoulder height. "Mister?" Harlan stepped outside and tested the flour sacking repair. "This rope will not carry 13 through summer." "I know. You need new hemp. I know the price." He glanced at Edwin's measuring marks in the dirt. "The yard is earning again." It never stopped earning. Some people only stopped looking. Late that afternoon, Morgan returned for salt and lamp oil. He crossed the alley while Rosa repaired 3 hotel buttonholes with tight stitches. He slowed beside the fence. "You took on Danner's washing. He brought work in daylight." Morgan accepted the rebuke. His gaze settled on her fingers. One cloth wrap had darkened where the skin beneath had split. "You should rest. Rest does not finish Tuesday orders." "I could replace the line." "You could have stood beside it yesterday?" Morgan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "That is true." He left without another word. Rosa worked until the hotel shirts hung in 2 pale rows. When she finally lowered her hands, both index fingers throbbed, and the center rope had stretched another inch. The next Friday, she arrived before dawn carrying fresh soap and found a single folded shirt on her bench. Morgan's gray one. The torn cuff had opened beside her blue stitching. A coin rested on top, exactly matching her usual charge. No note, no apology. Only another request left in darkness. Rosa left the gray shirt where it lay until the sun crossed the store roof. She washed 12 other garments, boiled 2 kettles, repaired a hotel sheet, and carried 3 finished bundles to the front counter. Each time she passed the bench, the coin on Morgan's shirt caught the light. At dusk, she set a lamp beside the tub. Morgan came through the alley after the store doors were barred. He looked at the bench, then at Rosa. "You found it." "I found something left where a man did not have to answer for it." Rosa lifted the shirt by the torn cuff. "If you want this washed, you stay." Morgan glanced toward the dark store windows. "No one is here," she said. "That is not the point." He removed his hat and placed it beside the coin. Rosa filled the tub with hot water and soap shavings, then handed him the weakened line. "Hold it tight while I move the brace." Morgan took the rope. The hemp fibers pressed into his palm as Rosa shifted the heavy hotel sheets closer to the post. When the line pulled hard, he widened his stance and kept it level. "You have been carrying too much weight here," he said. "I had more work than rope. I should have replaced it. You should have done several things." He accepted that without defense. Rosa lowered his shirt into the water. Dust clouded around the cloth. She worked the collar first, then the cuffs, showing him where sweat and trail dirt settled deepest. Morgan watched her hands. "My wife used cedar," he said. "So do half the women in Kansas. She put it in my winter things." Rosa kept scrubbing. "After she died, people brought food for 3 months. Then they watched to see when I would become normal again. Every kindness came with eyes attached. So you decided kindness was safest when no one saw it." "I decided I could spare you those eyes." "You spared yourself." The words remained between them, clean and sharp. Morgan looked down at the rope. Yes, the store wall held the last heat of the day. A piano sounded from the hotel dining room. Rosa wrung out the shirt and laid it across the table. Morgan released the line and examined the cracked brace. Without being asked, he fetched a hammer from beneath the bench and drove a fresh wedge beside it while Rosa threaded blue cotton through the torn cuff. When he finished, the post stood firm. "The rope is still bad," she said. "I know. So is fixing one thing in darkness and calling the whole structure sound." Morgan sat on an overturned bucket. Rosa brought out bread, cold beef, and 2 cups of water. They ate beside the wash table without ceremony. For a little while, the yard was simply a place where 2 tired people shared work and supper. Morgan told her which creek crossing had washed shallow. Rosa told him Danner's porter had tried to starch a shirt before rinsing out the soap. Morgan laughed once, low and surprised. Then voices came through the store. Mr. Harlan and a freight driver were counting crates near the back door. Morgan rose and stepped behind the feed shed. Rosa did not call him back. The door opened, yellow light spilling across the yard. "Mr. Harlan set out an empty barrel and returned inside without noticing Morgan in the shadow. When the door closed, Morgan came forward. His face had changed. He had seen himself clearly, and the sight gave him no comfort. Rosa placed his repaired shirt in the tub to soak. "I will finish this one," she said. "After that, I will not keep making room for a man who disappears whenever a door opens." Morgan picked up his hat. "This will be the last," he said. "That is your choice." He looked at the shirt beneath the cloudy water, then at the strengthened post and the fraying rope between them. Morgan walked away through the alley. Behind him, his final shirt remained soaking in Rosa's tub, waiting for whatever she would send back with it. Two more bundles disappeared before Rosa finished Morgan's shirt. Mrs. Tally sent her niece for the tablecloths she had reconsidered, and the bank clerk's wife removed 6 collars from Rosa's Tuesday list. Neither woman entered the yard. They waited at the store counter while Mr. Harlan carried the bundles through the back door. 13 weekly orders became 11. Rosa crossed out 2 names in her ledger and looked toward the southern prairie. The sky had gone the color of tarnished brass. Along the horizon, a wall of red dust climbed higher than the cottonwoods. She touched the hemp line. The center fibers felt hot and dry beneath her fingers. "Storm before supper, Mr. Harlan said from the doorway. Before that, Rosa moved the colored garments to the eastern post, where the feed shed offered partial cover. She took down anything already dry, rolled the hotel sheets instead of folding them, and carried the starch-sensitive shirts beneath the wagon bed. The first gust struck before she finished. Wooden pins sprang from the rope. A white hotel shirt twisted around the line, pulling 3 others against it. Rosa caught 2, but the third flew into the yard. Then the hemp snapped. The loaded center dropped into red mud. Rosa went to her knees. She lifted white shirts by their collars, keeping their cleanest sections from touching the ground. Rain began in heavy, widely spaced drops, darkening the dust faster than she could move. "Mr. Harlan ran out with a flour tarp. "Cover the tubs." "Cover the dry bundles," Rosa said. "Mud will set if these lie still." She separated blue cloth from white before the dyes could run. She carried the hotel shirts to the pump, but the first water came brown with stirred sediment. She caught rain from the shed roof in 2 clean kettles and used it to loosen the surface dirt. The broken line dragged behind her like a dead vine. One of Morgan's blue repairs showed through a torn, mud-stained cuff. There are times when kindness asks nothing, and times when silence begins charging interest. A person may believe hiding care protects everyone involved, yet the hidden one always pays most. How long can tenderness remain honorable when only one heart must carry its weight in public? Rosa worked through the storm. She rinsed red clay from the white shirts before applying soap. She kept alkaline wash water away from the iron stains, then used the mild sour rinse only after the grit was gone. When clean rainwater ran low, she saved it for the hotel collars and used pump water for dark work trousers. The hotel porter arrived for the promised evening delivery and found Rosa kneeling in muddy water with her sleeves rolled above both elbows. She sent him back empty-handed with a new promise for morning. Missing the hour could cost her the account, but rushing the treatment would ruin every shirt. By midnight, every hotel shirt hung from temporary cords stretched beneath the store awning. The private orders lay sorted across barrels and chairs. 2 collars would need restarching. 1 sheet had taken a permanent red shadow along its hem. Nothing belonging to the hotel was lost. Morgan's gray shirt waited alone in the final tub. Rosa washed it last. The storm had torn open the cuff beside her blue stitching and ground mud into the sleeve. She repaired the tear, whitened the soap marks, and pressed the collar smooth. Then she stopped. She did not starch the cuffs. She placed no cedar leaves beneath the fold because she did not fold it at all. Rosa laid the shirt flat on the bench and wrote 1 sentence on a piece of store paper. "I cannot keep caring for what you hide." Her fingertips had split beneath their cloth wrappings. She tied the note to the top button with blue thread and carried the shirt to Morgan's ranch before sunrise. She left it on his porch. Morgan found it when the storm clouds were breaking apart over the eastern fields. He read the note once, then again. Across the valley, the wash yard stood exposed behind the general store. The old hemp line lay in the mud, broken between its posts. Morgan held the unfolded shirt against his chest and stared toward town. For the first time, absence no longer looked like protection. It looked like a choice. Morgan carried Rosa's note into the kitchen and laid it beside the wash basin. The gray shirt hung over his arm, clean except for the mud shadow that no amount of scrubbing had fully lifted from one sleeve. Her blue stitches held the cuff together. The paper tied to its top button had softened in the damp morning air. He read the sentence again. Then he removed the shirt he was wearing. The ranch pump gave hard water with a metallic taste. Morgan filled a galvanized tub, shaved in too much soap, and worked the cloth against a washboard until thick foam climbed over his wrists. He scrubbed the collar first because he had seen Rosa begin there, but he used the same pressure on every stain. The shirt grew stiff beneath his hands. He poured in more soap. By the time he rinsed it, white streaks clung to the weave. He mixed starch without measuring and soaked one cuff deeper than the other. When he carried the shirt outside, the south wind caught it before he reached the fence. Morgan grabbed one sleeve, the other tore free. The shirt sailed across the yard, struck a water barrel, and fell into mud beside the corral. His horse shied from the flapping cloth. Morgan caught it under one boot before the wind could carry it farther. Mud covered the back. The repaired cuff had split beside Ross's blue thread. He stood over the ruined work with soap drying on his hands. At the barn, he took down a coil of new hemp rope he had bought months earlier and never used. He added a bundle of wooden pins, Rosa's note, and the badly washed shirt to his saddle. The eastern sky was still gray when he reached town. Rosa had already set 2 temporary cords beneath the store awning. 11 customer bundles waited in orderly stacks, each marked for delivery. Her broken hemp line lay across the yard, red with mud and frayed at the center. Morgan tied the new rope to the cottonwood post. Rosa stepped from the back door carrying a kettle. "Do not—" He kept one hand on the knot. "The line needs replacing. It did yesterday, too. I can finish before anyone comes." "That is why you cannot—" Morgan released the rope. Rosa set down the kettle. The cloth around 2 of her fingers had bled through again. He placed the gray shirt on the bench. Its soap streaks showed in the early light. One cuff stood stiff with starch, while the other sagged. Mud darkened the back, and the fresh tear crossed her old blue repair. "I washed it," he said. "I can see that. I used too much soap." "You used too much of nearly everything." Morgan nodded. "I thought the work was water and strength." "It is judgment." "I know that now." "No. You know you failed once. That is not the same as knowing the work." He looked at the broken line, then at the stacks she had saved from the storm. "I told myself leaving you alone would protect you." Rosa waited. "It protected me from standing here while people decided what my need meant. You carried the rest." The first freight wagon rattled somewhere beyond Main Street. Morgan picked up the new rope but did not tie it. "What does honest repair require?" he asked. Rosa examined the old line. She cut away the worst section, kept one weathered length, and showed him how to splice it into the new hemp so the strain would spread across the knot. They worked without hiding the sound of the hammer. When the rope was secure, Morgan hung nothing on it. "I will bring this shirt back at noon," he said. "Clean. As it is, why? Because I have spent 11 years making sure no one saw me need anything. Today they can see I needed help and asked the wrong way." Rosa crossed her arms. "A public shirt does not buy forgiveness. I know. It does not promise courtship. I know that too." Edwin leaves on the noon freight. Morgan folded Rosa's note and placed it inside his coat. "Then you will give him whatever answer you choose." He mounted and rode back toward the ranch with the ruined shirt tied behind his saddle. By noon, the freight wagon stood outside the general store. Edwin waited beside 2 packed sample cases. Mr. Harlan had opened the back doors, and customers gathered for their bundles beneath the newly spliced line. Rosa carried the clothespin basket into the yard. The town clock struck 12. Morgan had not yet entered the alley. The town clock finished striking before Morgan appeared at the far end of the alley. He came on foot. The badly washed gray shirt hung over one arm. In his other hand he carried clothespins and the short length of rope left after their repair. His hat sat low, but he did not use it to hide his face. Edwin noticed him first. "So this is your answer?" he asked Rosa. "No," she said. "My answer is mine." Morgan entered the yard while customers collected bundles from the store doorway. Mrs. Tally stood near the flour barrels. The bank clerk's wife had come behind her boy. Morgan stopped beneath the new line and shook out the shirt. Soap had dried in pale streaks across the chest. Mud stained the back. One cuff stood stiff as paste, while the other drooped around the tear beside Rosa's blue stitches. A few people smiled before remembering they were being watched. Morgan fastened one shoulder to the center of the line. The cloth twisted in the noon wind. He reached for another pin, but the uneven starch made the cuff fold badly. Rosa stepped closer. "Not there," she said. Morgan paused. "If you pin wet weight at the cuff, it pulls the seam." She pointed to the yoke. Morgan moved the pin and secured the shirt where she indicated. It hung crooked, plainly imperfect, directly above the alley where everyone could see it. Edwin looked from the shirt to Rosa. "You would trade Wichita for this." Rosa turned to him. "I would not trade myself for Wichita. I offered you a business. You offered me work under your name, in your building, purchased with your money. So long as I became grateful enough not to question the terms." Edwin's face reddened, but he did not argue. Rosa gave him the answer he had requested. "No." He closed his sample cases. "You may regret it." "Then it will be my regret." Edwin lifted the cases and left through the store. Morgan waited until the wagon wheels faded. Then he faced Rosa. "I told myself I kept my shirts out of sight because people would speak poorly of you," he said. "Truth is, I could not bear them seeing that I needed anyone. I let you carry the shame of my fear." No one in the yard moved. Morgan took Rosa's creased note from his coat. She wrote that she could not keep caring for what I hid. She was right. Rosa's expression did not soften. "You did not need to read that aloud." "No, but I needed to stop making you the only person who said the truth where others could hear it." He folded the note and returned it to his pocket. "I am not asking Rosa Bell to wash my shirts in secret. I am asking whether she will teach me to do the work properly, and whether, after that, she might allow me to call on her by the front door." "Mrs. Tally glanced at the shirt. "That cuff looks ruined." Rosa looked up. "It is not ruined. It was handled badly." A small sound passed through the yard. Not quite laughter. Morgan nodded. "Most things can be handled badly without being beyond repair." Rosa picked up the clothespin basket and held it toward him. "One lesson," she said. "You carry water. You measure before pouring, and you do not disappear when a door opens." Morgan took the basket. "And the calling, one front door visit. After that, I decide whether there is another." "Fair." The hotel porter stepped forward with a receipt for the saved shirts. "Mr." Danner had added another standing order. "Mr." Harlan erased Edwin's yard measurements with his heel. "This space is no longer uncertain," he said. "The store washing is yours weekly. If you want it." Mrs. Tally placed her tablecloths on Rosa's bench. "I suppose honest work does not worsen because a town whispers over it." The bank clerk's wife added her collars. A third former customer followed before Rosa closed the ledger. 11 bundles became 14, with the general store's order, 15. Rosa wrote the number once and did not underline it. Above her, Morgan's gray shirt pulled against the new rope. The old frayed hemp remained visible inside the center knot, carrying its share of the weight. Morgan stood beside Rosa, holding the clothespin basket while the witnesses drifted toward Main Street. For the first time, he did not follow the shadows when they left. Friday noon found Morgan coming through the front of the general store with 2 shirts, a pail, and the clothespin basket Rosa had let him borrow. The yard was busy with 15 regular bundles, and the new drying frame stood half-built beside the old line. Rosa pointed toward the pump. "Water first." Morgan filled the pail, tested the weight, and carried it without sloshing half across the yard. At the tub, he reached for the soap. "How much?" she asked. He looked at the shirts, then at the water. "Less than I used before." "That is not a measure." Rosa handed him the knife. Morgan shaved a small pile, stopped, and waited for her nod before adding it. He learned to feel whether soap remained in the rinse, to loosen trail dust before scrubbing, and to hang a shirt by the yoke instead of the cuff. His first clean shirt dried with one pale streak across the back. Rosa made him rinse it again. He did not complain. On the next Friday, he replaced 3 broken pins and carried hotel sheets to the eastern frame. The Friday after that, he arrived while Mrs. Tally was discussing a wine stain and stood beside Rosa until the woman finished. He did not step behind the feed shed when the store door opened. People watched at first, then they stopped. A man washing his own shirt became less interesting than freight prices, cattle weights, or the question of whether rain would hold through Sunday. Morgan learned that daylight did not always demand a defense. Sometimes it simply showed the work as it was. The 15 weekly bundles remained steady. Rather than load more weight onto the repaired rope, Rosa marked out a second drying frame. Morgan brought lumber, but she chose the height, the spacing, and the direction it faced. "You are building it wrong," she told him after his first brace leaned west. Morgan pulled the nail and started again. When the frame stood square, he paid Rosa the usual washing charge. "You helped with half of it," she said. "I helped badly with less than half." "That is accurate." He smiled. "Then we agree." He continued paying until the afternoon. Rosa closed her ledger, set 2 plates on the back table, and told him supper was not part of his bill. Their front door visits began the same way their work had changed, without speeches large enough to hide behind. Morgan brought coffee. Rosa asked about the north pasture. He listened when she spoke about expanding the hotel account, and he never once suggested that marriage should place her business beneath his name. Near the end of summer, he stood beside the second frame while clean shirts moved above them. "I would like to court you beyond this yard," he said, "properly, if you will allow it." Rosa adjusted one clothespin before answering. "You may call on Sundays. At the front door, at the front door, and if a door opens, you remain where you are." Morgan nodded. "I can do that." The old hemp rope still crossed the center knot of the new line. It had darkened from rain and soap, and several fibers had worn smooth beneath the strain. Rosa left it there, not because it was strong enough by itself, but because it had become part of something better made. Morgan's gray shirt hung among the others, clean now, its blue thread repair still visible at the cuff. He stood beside Rosa with the clothespin basket resting against his hip, while the noon sun reached every corner of the yard. This time, nothing on Rosa Bell's line had to hide.